sponsored video because I gotta save up money for my studio. So, design. Funny enough, I've been getting a lot of interesting comments on design lately. Don't know why. Weird, right? So totally weird. Kind of funny. I don't really know why anybody would be thinking about it. But, that being said, critique is a really handy thing for an artist. Any artist, providing that it's welcome. So I thought, why not share my present favorite guide for constructing critique with my audience? I say present because it's a gift to you. From today's video sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is, in essence, an online hub to host classes made by creators for just about every walk of life. You pay a monthly subscription fee and you get access to their entire roster. Want to learn a new trade? Bam! Step-by-step guide on the basics. Already kind of familiar with it? Just need a little help improving? Bam! Here's an expert who will tell you the tricks and shortcuts to effectively teach you how to work smarter and not harder, and get better while you're at it. As I mentioned, one class I've personally been getting a lot of mileage out of is How to Critique Any Design by MJ Trong. They introduce the class by telling you first off what makes for a bad critique, and then gives you a full step-by-step for how to create one that's kind, well-intentioned, and genuinely helpful. I think there's a lot of benefit to be had in that sort of structure because knowing what you're doing wrong first can help break down bad habits that have already formed. And then MJ jumps right into helping you make new and better ones. Skillshare is a great way to find something that you could have passion for but didn't have the resources to explore before. Creativity is a muscle, and in my humble experience, Skillshare has been one of my best resources on how to grow it to be stronger. The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, so then you can start exploring your creativity today. And now, on with the video. I wish that I had a clever opening for this, but having already made this video, I can tell you now that through its creation, I have swiftly and also surely lost grasp on all of my senses of time, space, and antimatter. So I'm just gonna have to assume that I was sitting around minding my own business when the thought struck, what if Pikachu, but Eevee? And we're just gonna move on. To illustrate my point to you, dear viewer, I then chat this out in the next 10 minutes. So what the hell are we looking at? So glad I asked. Pikachu is obviously the one true mascot for Pokemon as a whole. There isn't even really anything that special about the damn thing. If I'm frank, I'm sick of looking at it. But it sure won the lottery. Eevee, however, I think it's pretty objective to say at this point, is a clear fan favorite since, it climbed its own way up to secondary mascot status after the wild success of its silly, wacky deoxyribonucleic acid. And you know what? Good for him. I'm a sucker for this bitch too. Me and everybody else in the fandom. And Eevee does have a whole gimmick, unlike Pikachu. The whole different evolutions for different types thing, divine, to die for. So, because these two series mascots for Pokemon are so very different, just for fun, what if we just take them and we switch them around? Turn Eevee into a 3-stage pure electric type Pokemon line and make Pikachu into the Pokemon with an evolution for 8 out of 18 Pokemon types. So I made this not only to make sure that I didn't forget the video idea itself, but also as like a sort of way for me to chew on my thoughts, like digest them a little. Consider the flavor profiles. I wanted to know what my very base idea for designs would look like, since having an idea in your head versus translating them onto paper are two very different things. So I thought if I got a first draft out of the way right away, then I would know what I needed to put more thought and research into. So by the time I started recording, I would come in a little more prepared instead of just floundering on the spot for the world to see. Which I think was a good call on my end. The water Pikachu in particular. Eek. I made these, I slept on it, I looked at him again in the morning, grimaced over God's least favorite again, and decided to do some prep on Bulbapedia before even thinking about touching my tablet pen. Because what I really, really want to try and accomplish with this challenge is swapping these concepts in a way that looks as plausible as possible for like something that you would actually see in an upcoming Pokemon game. Like if I were to post these and pretend that they were leaks, I want it to be something that people would be tricked by, at least for like a minute. I made a whole video before criticizing that I don't think the Galar Pokedex quite fits in with the Pokemon style, and I want to do my best to adhere to my own standards. And I feel like part of that is just trying to be as faithful and thoughtful as possible about the lore and inspiration that went into these Pokemon, like past the designs. So I did a lot of reading. That was not easy for me. I've got ADHD and dyslexia, large bodies of text, not fun, not my friend. But I was very committed, so I did it. Just, I was gonna take it one step at a time. I figured I would read an article and then maybe a little bit of supplementary reading and then do a drawing and then go back and read the next one. I wasn't reading everything first and then gonna draw. Wasn't happening. And the easiest place to start was probably gonna be the beginning, so I was reading up on Pichu and Eevee. I wasn't sure yet, for my 3-line Eevee evolution. I didn't know if I wanted Eevee to be the first or the second stage yet, but I thought that making Pichu as my Eevee, like the base, and then having all the evolutions be based on Pikachu would give Pikachu the most emphasis there, which made sense to the challenge in my head. God almighty though, take my word for it, getting through Eevee's Bulbapedia page was a slog. You'd think there'd be plenty to say about one of the most popular and versatile Pokemon in existence. And you would be right, but you would also be with egg on your face. Because there was a lot of entries, and basically every single entry was, this Pokemon has unstable DNA and evolves a lot, with different diction, slightly different diction each time. The Ultramoon Dex made me laugh a little bit though. The genes are easily influenced by surroundings. Even the face starts to look like that of its trainer. What the fuck? So, Eevee's page, overall, extremely unhelpful for my needs, actually. Like, not only is it very repetitive, but Eevee has so many unique game mechanics amongst different games that the biology section was it was too packed to include any fun facts. It was full of its different Z moves and Gigantamax and every single move that it can learn in Let's Go. So not a lot there. And the design origin section didn't help either. That just told me that it was based on a make-believe memory from the designer. Not a lot to work with. Which, by the way, is not a slight at the people running Bulbapedia at all. I'm sure this is a source material issue. It is just, this was unhelpful for what I was doing. Pichu's page, though, that was interesting. Like, first off, in biology, it mentions that Pichu is technically a quadruped, despite being able to walk easily on 2 feet. And I like drawing Pikachu on all fours, as you may be able to tell, so I will take advantage of that, thank you. And that was just kind of personal preference, though. Pichu's biology section also offers a lot more flavor text as opposed to Eevee's game mechanic explanations. It describes how, playful and social and stupid Pichu is, and how easily they accidentally shock themselves because they are but babies still, and how much they cry. I cry. I love you, Pichu. I cry free. I love you, Pichu. Cannot express how much it sucks to be such a huge fan of Pichu and Raichu, and this is the bitch that gets all the attention. I'm robbed. The Pokedex entries are also a lot more interesting. They mention how Pichu has an easier time charging up on dry or thunderstormy days, implying that it doesn't have an infinite supply of its elemental power, which I was not aware was in any of the typing lore. I assume things like water types have infinite storage, because I don't know where they're getting all those water beams and hydro pumps otherwise. And the Dex entries also mention how Pichu cries so much. They continue to mention how much Pichu cries. I want to incorporate that somehow. I'm keeping that. And then also how Pichu has such a hard time controlling its discharge when it gets emotional in any capacity. That also gives me some ideas. Since Eevee's page gave me jack all, we're just gonna start with designing normal type Pichu first. Preliminary thoughts before I even started drawing were how most normal types seem to be brown or cream or pink, and since we can probably reserve pink for the fairy type Pikachu, and Eevee is brown and cream already, I'm just gonna yoink its color palette. Additionally, I believe, don't run the numbers on this, it's just kind of an observation that I thought I was making, but more often than not, that normal types tend to have inner ears, or at least more often than electric types do. I think it just helps it look more like an organic mammal, so I think I'm going to be giving Pichu's ears some dimension. And lastly, since Pichu is such a crybaby, I wanted to move its little cheek markings up to under its eyes to look vaguely sort of like tears. All this went into my first draft, along with making Pichu's collar fluffier and the coloring on the tail both to resemble how Eevee's tail is tipped lighter and Pikachu's tail is based darker, which led to the first draft looking a lot more like just a straight up Eevee Pichu fusion than I anticipated or really wanted. Moreover, something about it just doesn't look very Pokemon to me. I couldn't exactly tell if it was the anatomy or the colors seemed off, or if it was just my personal style influencing it. So attempt number 2. This time I tried going with some more typical Pichu body type. While I was scrolling around the other normal types, I noticed a lot of them tend to have something funky happening with the end of their tails. In the first draft, I tried to make Pichu's tail look just kind of like a rhombus. So this time, I tried adding like a crook partway through, leading up to the base, which gives it stronger shape language, but it definitely looks a lot more like the original Pichu tail, just like adjusted. Instead of intended to look like a lightning bolt, it's intended to look like a bent tail, you know, like an alley cat. A lot of normal type first forms are also really simple in their design and colors, so I tried making the ears like a solid color, and instead of putting pink on the inside of it, I allocated the pink to its eyes. And then overall I saturated all the browns, hoping that would help. Sorta did, I think it did, but overall I still wasn't feeling great about it. Something was still off, so another draft. Third attempt, I was really set on the ears being part of what was throwing me, so looking around at different normal types, I decided to do something more stylized than I already had. Like, I'd been drawing them sort of like the insides of cat's ears up till now. So I tried taking some inspiration from Pokemon like Teddiursa and just plopping like a cute little comma-looking shape on it, and, you know, that being the inner ear. I also decided to move the dark coloring at the base of its tail to the center of the tail, and then just played with some colors some more. I played with tipping the ears in cream. Sickening, don't know why I did that. That looks bad. Changed them back to brown. And, you know, here, we have landed somewhere I feel pretty happy with. And I want to get all the drafts for everything out of the way before I go finalizing any designs. So this meant that I could move on to working on the Eevee concept art. I mean, except, no, absolutely no the fuck I could not, because I still had not decided if I wanted Eevee to be the first or the second stage in the evolution line. Like, my plan was to do one evolution at a time, you know, and just keep going back and forth. I guess my hang up, right? I feel like the obvious direction for this challenge, since I'm making Eevee a pure electric type, was to keep it with the Jolteon line. So that already, that settles 2 evolutions for me, and it just brings into question the third. So do I want to make a babier Eevee and end with Jolteon? Or do I want to make, a big beast, past Jolteon? Because, if Eevee's the second evolution, then I'm going to have to beef up its design a bit, and then Jolteon's also going to have to get, more complicated, so I could have something the least complicated for the baby. But, I mean, Eevee could be suited to a baby design. I sat around for a good while with decision paralysis, a good long while, and, trying to will myself to just start a design and decide what stage it would be at later. But something about that was just, really, really mentally fucking with my circadian rhythm. So I made the tough decision to drag myself right back onto Bulbapedia and read up on Jolteon. A little earlier than I anticipated, but I was hoping it would give me some direction. My expectations for how much this would help me make a decision were relatively low, and I was beyond pleasantly surprised. Jolteon's page was chock full of shit that got my juices flowing. There was an awful lot of lore on the different ways that Jolteon utilizes electricity and its spikes. A lot of mention of negativity, either with how Jolteon utilizes negative ions or just how bad its mood can be in general, which is funny because that reminds me of Pichu being a crybaby. That's cute. And there's also mention of an episode in the anime where Jolteon works as a herding Pokemon. It keeps flocks of Magnemite in line. I don't like that phrase, flocks of Magnemite. But all in all, it was mostly fun facts. It wasn't anything hugely inspiring until I got all the way to the bottom, to the design section. The people at Bulbapedia speculate on how maybe Jolteon was meant to look like a herding dog, or maybe a fennec fox, or a cheetah, or a coyote. And I'm like, okay, cool, good place to start. A lot of options, but definitely a finite amount of options. I can work with that. But they also mention how Jolteon's design was potentially based off of a Raiju, which is a thunder beast in Japanese mythology. The legendary Raikou is definitely based on a Raiju, but Raichu was named after it, which is funny because between that and the negative emotion and the crying stuff, I feel like I've spiritually connected Jolteon to Pichu and Raichu. And because of that little connection, that personal little connection, my heart's telling me that Jolteon was simply meant to be the second stage of this line, which would make Eevee the first and leave the job of designing the third one entirely from scratch up to me, which I think given what I've read here, would only be appropriate to base on a Raiju, which led me to another Wikipedia page. I wanted to see if there were any animals that Raiju were typically based on, and okay. So, where Jolteon has finite options, Raiju has infinite options, I fucking guess. Okay, you know what? They say that Raiju most often looks like dogs, and I saw herding dogs mentioned twice on Jolteon's page. Perfect. Let's go. We're going with it. Also, this is largely unrelated to the video, but Wikipedia says that Raiju are both so large that they like to sharpen their claws on trees, which is the folklore for what happens to trees struck by lightning, but also that they are so small that Raiju like to live in human navels, like belly buttons. If I have to know this, then so do you. I am not ashamed to admit that right off the bat, I went into these concepts with mostly just having ideas for the final evolution. So I was just kind of spitballing the Eevee and the Jolteon. Frankly, I figured they'd be pretty easy. I hadn't realized at the time, while I was doing this, before I am who I am today, having finished this, I didn't realize how fucking dramatic the difficulty curve would be. I'm still very tired. But we aren't quite there yet. Back to the calm before the thunderstorm. For first stage baby Pokemon Eevee, the first thing I wanted to do was I wanted its ears to look like little rounded lightning bolts. I considered literally shaping them like Yamper's tail, but 2 of them and on its head. But I decided to put 1 notch on the outside of the ear and then 1 on the inside of the ear in hopes of just implying the lightning shape instead. I also traded Eevee's big fluffy collar in favor of putting a little white jagged fluff patch so it would look more natural when it evolved and grew out into Jolteon's trademark pin collar. And I also made the hard and probably sacrilegious choice to remove Eevee's big fluffy tail as well. Drafting a design for a second stage Jolteon was practically cheating. I didn't really need to do much. All I really did was I added this funky little white tail, and then I went back and I added some black markings to both of them along their back. But easy enough that I felt pretty more or less set in these designs, I could see maybe some minor changes, but I didn't think I needed any further drafts, which meant that I was able to go forward and just get started with the third stage. And I already had 3 things in particular that I wanted to do, and I had 3 things that I knew I didn't want to do. I knew that I didn't want to include any sort of clouds on the design because I wanted to avoid stepping on Raikou toes as much as possible. And I knew I didn't want to end up with anything that was detailed enough to look more like a legendary than a third stage. I figured that was a concern that I should be going into this with since I'm used to drawing warrior cats, which the typical warrior cat is definitely more designed than your typical Pokemon. And then as far as what I did want to do, I did want to extend Jolteon's pin collar around its neck and face to give it more of a border collie appearance, because I wanted to go forward with that. As well as I wanted to extend the pins on its butt, down around its legs, to give it the same kind of shaggy collie look. I knew that I did want it to look like electricity was coursing right through its spine and right out of its tail. And I did know that I wanted bones. I wanted to include markings on its fur that alluded to ribs and the spines and arm and leg bones. I wanted the look of when a cartoon character gets struck by lightning or sticks a fork in an electrical socket and they get zapped and you see their skeleton. That's what I wanted. So I ended up sticking to just those 5 base things. I think the only thing I kind of came up with on the spot was I ended up adding some black markings under its eyes, because the white markings that I had on the face to look kind of like collie markings, they were bugging me a little bit, but also after I added the black underneath them, I thought maybe that would kind of emulate a skull, which was an extra bone I hadn't planned on including. Which leaves us with my very first completely from scratch Fakemon design. And I like where it's going. I didn't think it looked over-designed necessarily, but it does have the same problem I was facing with the Pichu, where something that I couldn't quite put my finger on didn't look quite right, didn't quite look like a Pokemon. So I just immediately started drawing another draft without putting any further thought into it, because I figured I liked the silhouette pretty well as it was. It just needed a little tweaking. I thought maybe having the exterior spiny bit thing, I don't actually know what those would be made of. I thought maybe that was throwing things. And I was sort of struggling with the bone pattern as well. Like, I was trying to strike a balance between making it look like natural, just, you know, fur markings, but also clearly look like a skeleton, but also I felt really compelled to still make them look like jagged, you know, like implying the electricity, little thunderbolt sort of appearance. It also, something about the face markings, it just wasn't sitting right with me. So I drew basically the exact same body and just tried adjusting the patterns. And when I was done, I sat back and I stared between the two of them for a good while before deciding that actually I was very tired from all the reading and the thinking and the research that you didn't see on screen, and I was going to bed. Because obviously, like, what this needed was just some fresh eyes in the morning to give me ideas. And what fresh eyes in the morning gave me was a whole lot of fucking grief. Because now I realize, not only was the second design so much worse, what the fuck was I thinking? But also, the longer I sat there and I had to stare at this with fresh eyes and no excuses, and I sat and I thought and I brainstormed and I racked my itty bitty little pea brain, I realized, like, I still like the idea. I feel like it has potential. I want to believe in it, but I have no fucking clue what to do with this. I got nothing. Like, it's hard because my gut feeling was that maybe it just has to be too detailed somewhere. But Electivire and Zebstrika, like, I feel like they have more detailed markings than what I have, and they feel fine complexity-wise to me. And, like, I feel like what I was going for was definitely possible, but, like, I didn't understand why I wasn't able to figure it out. And I was already so set on, like, the body type and the colors that I had. The markings must be the problem, right? Right? So I made a base. Here's my base. And I decided I was just gonna fuck around with how to color this until I got something that I liked. And I just... I'm not sure if any art task has ever driven me over the edge as thoroughly and efficiently as this has. Because while trying to simplify stylized real-world things to their bare bones and cartoonish appeal is like pretty standard practice in character art, that doesn't make it easy. You can't really properly make something simple without having a good understanding of its real-world equivalent and how to translate that, and that is such an unexact science. But I knew it had to be based on an understanding of a real skeleton, and I felt pretty strongly about my skeleton pattern just not being clear enough. So I decided to, in order to help me like base my stylization on real things, I would sketch an overlay of an actual collie skeleton as like a guidelines for the markings, and I don't know what happened. I blacked out. I don't even remember my thought process for most of these, and I'm sitting here reviewing this footage, and I can feel how increasingly frantic I was getting with each draft, because I didn't like any of them at all. Like, so frantic that you can see how immediately I tripped myself up over this dumb fucking skeleton thing, because instead of simplifying the bones that I had, I kept continually trying to add more in hopes of making the skeleton obvious. So I quickly went from, well, I don't think this is over-designed, to overdoing it to such a fucking extreme. I ended up with 10 of these, and I hated all of them. And you can't even see because it's a speed paint. The footage is so sped up. You can't see how long these took me, that I was sitting there and spending so much time just banging my head against the wall trying to think, like, what else could I try? All of these are so bad. Like, look at these, what? None of them even look remotely like Pokemon. And they've all gotten further and further from my goal, and it's visual noise. I am exactly where I started with how my very first draft was by far the best, and I'm still not even close. I needed help. I crawled to my friend Sam on my fucking knees, begging for some direction. And Sammy, bless her heart, she took pity on me. She made her own concept based off of what I told her I was going for. Looked like this. She based hers on a mongoose instead of on a herding dog. And she told me the literal one thing that I needed to hear. The shape language of the body was already off. Pokemon relies on minimal and strategically used shapes, so using this and focusing on the markings was just dooming me to feel overdesigned from the start. Oh. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I should have known. I should have known. I should have known that marrying myself to anything from the first draft was bad practice. Played my fucking self. My own fucking fault. The difference was truly night and day with how much of an easier time, a better time I was having after just starting with a clean slate again versus trying to just work on the markings. Thank you, Sam. I still went ahead using the exact same concepts that I had, you know, like not using the clouds and the border collie and the skeleton and all that, because I wanted those. I didn't think they were the problem. And then I made 4 more designs, testing out just different executions for the body shapes. And I decided that I could take it much easier on the markings because I had a different idea in mind for how to convey that lightning strike skeleton thing. But the idea that I had wasn't really part of the design itself. And I thought instead of explaining it, that it might be a lot more fun to just show it to you guys. So how about, you know, without further ado, I do.
Eevee, the static Pokemon. It appears that after a change in habitat, Eevee's ability to adapt to its environment honed itself towards high concentrations of electricity in the air. It has developed a storage sac to collect electricity charged by the static its fur insulates during dry weather. However, it has very little control over this stored energy and needs the excess static routinely groomed out of its fur. Its relationship to Pikachu seems to have influenced this mutation, but the exact cause is still unknown. Jolteon, the lightning Pokemon. With a more refined control over its electrical power, Jolteon makes for an excellent herding Pokemon, using its needle-like fur to focus its discharges to guide livestock where its trainer directs them to go. Jolteon are known to be proud but particularly sensitive Pokemon. When it's feeling moody, its powers charge up more quickly than normal. Because of this temperament, Jolteon can be difficult to train without excessive praise. Despite its prickly appearance, it loves a good rub behind the ears. Volcaron, the lightning rod Pokemon. Volcaron's anatomy is perfectly suited to collecting and directing electricity. During thunderstorms, it will find the highest point away from its village and use the horn on its forehead to gather and store the lightning that strikes. This stored lightning can be used later to unleash powerful electric attacks during battle or to help power trainers' homes. Volcaron's bark is said to resemble crackling thunder, and while sharpening its claws on trees, its claws will scar the trunks with scorch marks, as though it has been struck by lightning.
Man, I am still not a fan of most of the Galar Pokemon designs, but I have been humbled. Never before on this channel have I so thoroughly had to wage war against a challenge that I implemented for myself. This was so difficult. Difficult enough that this video itself is over a week late from my schedule, and that for the first time ever, I'm pretty sure, in my memory, I'm gonna have to split a speed paint into 2 parts. If you want to see the rest of Pichu's nonsense, show up for part 2 next month. I'm working on it right now. No idea. I have no idea how I'm gonna manage to design 8 more of these, but I'm still gonna do it. Granted, over half the reason that it took me so long to make this video was I decided to do this largely unnecessary illustration that's still going on in the background here, just to show you this like cool idea I had for the Pokemon, for Volcaron, that wasn't part of the design. You haven't even seen the cool part yet. This shit took 70 plus fucking hours. God, 70 plus hours. But, you know, pulling the topic back to the Jolteon line, honestly, at the end of the day, I had a lot of fun. Despite how frustrating this turned out to be, after I finished those 4 final concept sketches, around the time that I sat down and started drawing that fake, like, official style Pokemon art for the Pokedex moment back there, I was starting to feel pretty proud of myself. Like, I don't think that Volcaron's design is perfect by any means, but I do think that I accomplished the best outcome I could at my current skill level. It just kind of made me happy, feeling like a sense of accomplishment, a thorough sense of accomplishment from doing this. And part of me is still sort of riding that proud high. I sat around for a bit and thinking, wow, this was so hard. I wonder what it's like designing an entire generation by yourself. And then I thought, I wonder what it's like designing an entire generation by yourself. Don't let me do that. Don't let me do that, please. 3 was hard enough. Don't let me do that. But let me do 8 more Pikachus. Please tune in next month to see how the rest of Pichu goes. I have to go start that video right now immediately in hopes of getting it done on schedule. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy the final outcome of this 70-hour illustration.
Pokemon. Patreon is Ray's early access platform for previews of their ongoing projects. $2 a month allows access to everything they post, while $10 a month has your name read at the end of their videos. Just like this. Inugami Black, Dracos, Lucas, Mullins, Melvonix, It's Daddy AJ to you, Lola aka Sugar Skull, Capdagger 2, Dracoff, Sweeten, Weaselbites, Pete Rogers Art, Philip the Yokai, Furiel, Queen, Sonoko, Azzy, Jazzy, Astral Belt, Sue, Phantom Kid 02, Spook Eddie, Sunset Lemonade, Scully Sweet, Rhymin, Real Emmy, Never to be Seen, Error Fox 352, Sylvia Garcia, 7 Rats in a Trench Coat, Young Nana, Racebud, Ulrich Draws, Classically Electric, Ryder Deli, Little Star, Minin, Madu, Tez-tastic, Gracie Cake, Logan, Yakumo, Silkweed, Seal Avery, Kimiki, Miata, Plasm User, Berserker 102, Helix, Nate Art, Buggy Boy NB, Michael, Womelsdorf Art, Lauren, Inferno Show, Mark the Lark, Sound Alchemy, Athenith Witch, Hayes, CO-Tunes, Exorcist William, L. Ubies, Cheeky Jellybean, Kale Astros, Anna Ewens, Talon Aspenwall, Sweetly Sinstra, TV Island, Deadly Wolf's Rule, Maddie, Strawberry Candy, Chiodo, Holly Morningstar, Remiku Star, Dylan MX, Archibald Anarchy, DJ Cat Meow, Dissociated Duelers, Mist, Dia, Arrows the name, and B's the game, Ix Chilia, Adam Hegadis, Drex, a Gremlin, Golden Rose, Hachiyubi, Jacob Goodwin, Kramunch, Sammy Samur, Miss Contrary, Cooper Clark, Kodal Cuddles, Gravity Drop, Scribblet, Dark Souls 751, Fields of Starlight, Mickey Ann, Glasses Pro Tag, Project Empyrean 5, Luna, Yoku, Boring Studios, Phantom, Bagel, Kitty Freak, Gulatus, Middle Z, Lunaloo, The Mew, Madison, Zachary, Borges, Tally, Nobody Named Nick, Sam Pro 16, Sydney Moore, Ghostly Goat, Daphne Jolie, Jinx, Yan, Tristian, Tara Merengue, Rose Garcia, Maddie, Just Some Pineapples, Milkser, Ali Mocha, Raven Troll, Johnny Ariano, Tropical Road Freak here, Starla Herman, Squareheart, Kyger, Capri Crocker, Danny Glitter, The Legend of Alice, Golden Rosa Monsters, White Rhino 2222, Ray, Weepiness, Dragon Girl, Aravis Snow, Princess of Pastels, Spirit of Avalon, T-Sitter, Sprout Lad, Adri Kai 4921, Stimphalian, Artist 580, Rainshade, Nyx Flames, Tea Leaf, Lion, I Try to Fight, Junimo, Abigail Wargo, Adorable Kitten, Tooth Lily, Smooshy, Silver Shadow, Thunder, Evermore, Huey Ghoul, Sarah, Arrolo, Prince B, Silas Bravo, Brandon Bishop, Diana Lillian, Fire Newt 451, Avery Michael, D. Henry, Revalex, Wet Father, The Laundromat, Higgs Maynard, Spoof Timothy Unity, Sean M, Shinzea, Jordan Ripley, Ryan Bezdaki, Dat Artchip, Egoat, Gallivanting Galliforms, Zeolia, Anachan, Dusk, Natty Waggy, Solisar Uwu, Magichan, Grinmo, Teeny Tiny Draws, Ishiwo, Zephyr Priestess, Crimscore, That's Bobby, Mario Medina, BB, Doll Studios, Starry Raven, Sorta Friendly, I probably can't read, Sid Chaos, Fried Crystal, Gus Daniels, The Crystal Paladin, Russell the Jimmies, Nifty, Miros, Nikos Darcy, Dylan Fallon, Nelly Rikers, Ristaru, Deary of the Wind, Strawberry Bell, PTR Draws, Meet Me in Montauk, TV, Sincerely, Asha Hawkins, The Best, Andrew Robinson, Dust Munchies, It's KB, The Apathetic Asshat, SL Emmy, Cheesebrow, Arctic Sentry, Mim Silvernote, Zelfox, Dishwasher, Key the Queen, Titan 119 Logan, Fairlight, Jeremy Redinger, Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Prissy Antique, Antiqua, Emperor Dong, Nerdy Arts, Astrophel, AA Noir, Elijah, Makaru, Diego Tovar, Tazara, Swift Chaos, Johnny Stars, Popsicle Personified, Sabrina Tobey, Strawberry Bun Bun, Oshi Sauce, Amari Machine, Velvet Sugar Fox, Starling Studio, The Orc Cafe, Chao Usu, Leo Leon, Mincy, Ven Data, Ray Cost, Peachy Minty, Ashfear, Ray Cyberton, Aswix, Amy Villa, Kurt Coleman, Fuck You Mason, Shadow Princess 870, Christian Pimp, Violet Cat, Candy Bees, Hentai Goddess Uwu, Is They, Xril, Lance Thompson, Posse P, Hikari Yu, Reserie Ann, Liam Dexter, If I Was a Fruit Loop, Jose Montalvo, Coda, Cody Richard, Iolani Anderson, Shay L, Rudio, Jesse Ariano, Andre, Unknown Dev, Doodle Crazy Meg, Quake PI, Triplestone, Shortcake Steak, Nekozawa, James Zamora, Ouija Draws, Mew Kichigo, Do Joe Kid, Raiden, Blue Daniel 16, Cryptid, Free Flight, Cyrus Cupid, Jesse Root, Bracket, Andy Artistics, Molochu, Caller 3 Tuna, Hollow Jackals, CJ Duffy, Leviathan Ball Audacity, Seb, Danny, Alien Drag Queen, Jello 2, Stratus Wind, Night Mage 14, Eve. Patreon is theorized to have a connection to Eevee, but its method of evolution is currently unknown. Thank you all so much for your support. Have a great day! Beep beep!